Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Grateful to have the opportunity to check in with everybody once again. I figured tonight, just like we did the other day, give you a quick update as to where things stand, what ended up happening today, what we're up to today, and then I'm really excited to have another special guest on the phone, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Jason Furman, to talk about idea that we initiated today, a bill that we announced. That was his brainchild and was largely based off of some of the advocacy and research that he had done that we were able to take and run with around direct cash payments to the American public. So he's on the phone, he's on the line. We'll get to him in a quick second to answer your questions and talk about why he and I both think that this is so critically important, but you can hear it right from the guy that helped design this policy. So first, update us to kind of where we are today and what took place. Massachusetts, the number of confirmed cases of those infected continue to climb, and we expect that that's going to continue to climb for the foreseeable future. The good news here is that we are actually starting to see an expansion of testing. I was on the phone with a company the other day who which is going to drastically increase the number of tests that they have available and that they are making to several million a week over the course of the coming weeks. And so that's a big start. The fact is we're still behind. We need to increase that amount of testing dramatically. We need to get those test kits out into hospitals and frontline communities immediately. We still are facing a shortage of what's called, by now you probably all know, personal protective equipment, particularly those masks, gowns, face shields. Critically important for our first responders, for emergency room doctors, for the health professionals that we need to stay healthy and to be healthy to take care of all of us should we fall ill. So we are pushing very hard on various manufacturers to try to stand up these lines of production and get them up and running. There was a hiccup with some of the first piece of legislation that Congress passed that was meant to get these up and running. Some of those companies had held out for additional sweeteners in the second bill. Speaker Pelosi, from what I understand, basically stared them down, which I think was needed and necessary. And so hopefully we're moving forward now. But we need to get these materials out to folks across the country. We are still, the best thing we can do at this point is still depend on each and every one of us to do our part. We need you to engage in that social distancing. We need you to wash your hands. We need you to wipe down those commonly touched surfaces. If every one of us does our part over the course of the days and weeks ahead, we're going to be able to get through this with far less disruption, understanding that this already is not easy for anybody. But if we're going to get through the public health crisis on this, there's something that each and every one of us can do to do it and to make that disruption a little less painful. And we will get through it. That's the good news. But it's going to take a little while. Our main goal at this point is to try to diffuse this public health crisis so it doesn't end up into an economic crisis. And I'm sure many of you have seen those headlines today in the past couple of days. The roller coaster that we've seen over the stock market, announcements today from the administration, Secretary Mnuchin in particular, that the federal government is looking to move aggressively. The Federal Reserve, and Professor Furman can talk about this, has already moved very aggressively to try to inject more liquidity into the system, more money into the system. But critically, this didn't start out as a finance problem. This started out as this is an economic problem because we're telling people that they can't go to work and they can't eat at restaurants and they can't go to sporting events. So in that case, one of the big questions is how do we make sure that people have the money that they need in order to pay their bills, their rent, their mortgage, their car payment, their groceries, if they can't go to work. So what we announced today is a bill that does three big things. One, and this is the big one, and this is what I'm so thrilled to have Professor Furman here to talk about, is this direct cash payment. So what we did is basically delineate this for individuals who are making over $100,000 a year and those making under $100,000 a year. For those making under 100K, you're going to get $4,000. Two different payments, $2,000 and $2,000, about a month apart. If you got kids, you get $2,000 per kid. And the point on this is to provide some clarity, some reassurance that if you get sick, if you have a loved one get sick, if you can't go to work, it doesn't mean that you're going to be faced with financial devastation. Take the time, get well, get healthy, and you'll have some extra money to make sure that you can pay your bills, your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, your prescription drugs. Those payments are done about a month apart to ensure that you have money for the first month and money for the second month. And again, if we're able to do this in the near term, that should be able to get folks through at least 2 different payments of your credit card, your mortgage payment, et cetera, and very much needed and necessary liquidity. For folks making over $100,000, we cut that in half, $2,000 per person, $1,000 for every child. And that's the big crux of this bill, and I think why it's so important. The other 2 pieces, critically important too: increase and enhance unemployment assistance. We cut this week-long waiting period that some states have. We extend it for 13 more weeks on the back end. And we also increase Medicaid funding. Medicaid is a critical healthcare system for working families, for safety net hospitals. We need to make sure that there's sufficient resources there as these hospitals get inundated with patients, that they've got the margins that they need in order to keep the supplies up and keep providers there and keep people healthy. So that's the crux of the bill. I'm thrilled to announce it today, and thrilled to have Professor Furman, who is now at Harvard University, but the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors for President Obama, on the line as well. And he can talk a little bit about why he thought this idea was so important and why he was kind enough to let us take it and run with it. Professor, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Congressman. And I appreciate that you're letting me join this while driving my children in a car to make sure they can get to a safer place to social distance from.
I know the feeling, my friend. Thank you.
So hopefully the quality will be good enough. I think your leadership on this issue has been tremendous. I think this is one of the most important aspects of protecting families from the economic fallout that is inevitable in the context of what we're dealing with now. I worked closely with President Obama, right by his side, from beginning to end of the financial crisis. And from that experience, I took a few lessons. One is you just will never regret being ambitious. Too ambitious. You will never regret being too big. You will never regret being too early. And that's why this ambitious, big, and early approach is so important. Second, some people tuning in might think it's better to try to figure out exactly who's affected, exactly how they're affected, and compensate them. And I think we should do some of that. The House bill that you voted for included a paid leave provision that will help some of the particular people. The unemployment insurance that you're proposing in this bill would help people that are unemployed. But the other thing that I learned in the financial crisis is that, first of all, everyone is affected. Mm-hmm. It might be that somebody's working in a restaurant and they're not able to go to work, but then they're not spending somewhere else. And then somebody else is losing their income, and it all daisy chains down the line. And so at a time like this, I think would be a mistake. You could potentially leave tens of millions of families across this country, millions in Massachusetts, behind if you try to get too fancy and too elaborate. And so that's why I think this approach of providing cash assistance to people is so important. If you lost your job, if you're at 1/4 hours, if your tips have gone way down, if you're in the gig economy and you're not able to do it, or if you're just someone whose expenses just went up because of all of this, any one of those situations, it helps. You can use cash for anything. You can use it for a credit card payment. You can use it for a mortgage payment. You can use it to keep the lights on and pay your electricity bill. Or if you're in good enough shape, maybe you decide to order something online to help your family at a time like this. It's completely flexible. When I think about what it means for the economy, in the short run, it's about protecting families and protecting them from hardship. And then, 6 to 12 months from now, it's about helping make sure our economy can rebound as quickly as possible. Because if we don't take steps like this, the economic problems could outlast even the virus itself. So I think this is very important, as well as expanding unemployment insurance, getting more money for states for them to cover Medicaid, and just from my own experience, this is big, ambitious, early, and thrilled the Congressman is doing it.
So, understanding. So, first off, Professor, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise on this, and thank you for taking the time as you were on the phone, driving, no doubt, with a hands-free device, your children to a safer place. One question: have you been surprised to see that this has actually generated bipartisan support? That you've got Senator Tom Cotton voicing some support for this, that you've seen an administration that has now gone big on this, that you saw obviously Senator Romney voice some support, although for a much scaled back measure. But you've seen the discussion on this as of a couple months ago. This was kind of an Andrew Yang UBI, which this is not the same thing, obviously, but was kind of brushed off as something that was a pet project of the left that now all of a sudden is getting fairly serious support. Are you surprised to see that, and what do you make of it?
Well, Congressman, in today's day and age, sadly, it is a surprise anytime we see bipartisanship. And, this is a virus that is attacking Democrats, it's attacking Republicans, it's attacking independents. It doesn't care what party and what our beliefs are. And so maybe we're beginning to see what we're going to need to see, not just on this, but on so many issues, which is people coming together. I think it's a very common sense idea. I think it's one that I see no reason why both parties shouldn't like. President Trump was very attached to all sorts of tax cuts that only would have helped you. It wouldn't have helped you if you were out of a job, and wouldn't have helped you choose not to have not to work temporarily for safety. But maybe even he is showing a bit of pragmatism at this time.
Let's hope so. So we got a couple questions coming in, and to folks that are tuning in online, you can leave questions in the comment section for on our Facebook page for Jason and I, Professor and I, to answer. And Professor, as long as you're going with Congressman, I'm going with Professor. So we can cut that if you want to, but I'll leave that up to you. So first one is from Greg on Facebook for both of us. I'm a server at a small restaurant. My wife also works in the service industry. Yesterday, we stopped serving people in my house. I make most of my money in tips. What am I supposed to do while the restaurant is closed down? So, Greg, that's why we're offering this bill. It's for people like you. It's for people that have done everything we've asked them to do, that have done everything right, that now government is forcing those businesses like yours to shutter, at least for a period of time, in the better interest for all of us, so that people don't get sick with a deadly disease. But then government, if we're going to ask you to do that in the best interest of all of us, it's also in our best interest of all of us to make sure that you and your company can survive and you can get back up on your feet, which is why we're drafting this bill and why we're trying to make sure that you get access to the funding that you need in order to make ends meet in that meantime. That's all this is, trying to make sure that we look out for your survival while you're looking out for ours. And Professor, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I don't have anything to add. I think everyone is sacrificing, but some people are particularly sacrificing, and in the service industry and the like. I think just anything we can do is so important.
So this next one is from Ashley from Twitter, and it's for you, Professor. I'm now out of work for at least 2 weeks and have no way of bringing home a paycheck. How will this help me? Are both my husband and I eligible for this cash assistance? On to you.
Yes, both. Oh.
Yours. Yes, please.
Okay, great. So was it Ashley?
Yes.
Okay, so Ashley, both you and your husband would be eligible for this. You would get a substantial amount of assistance. This is much more than has ever been legislated before. And you could then use the cash for whatever you want. I want you to get a job as quickly as possible. And that's where, I'm a macroeconomist. And part of it is when people have this money, when the virus passes, it will mean more spending in the economy. That will mean more businesses can get money, grow, and hire people. So I think this will help you directly. But as an economist, I can tell you this will also help create more jobs. Maybe not more jobs in the next 2 or 3 weeks when the economy is going what it's going through, but in the coming months, by having more people out there spending, there'll be more jobs. So cash for you now, and hopefully this will help you get the job that you need in as timely a fashion as possible.
Great. Ashley, thank you. Professor, this one is from Vicky from our Facebook page for both of us. Vicky's asking about seniors. Are they eligible for this assistance, and what else is being done for them at this time? Vicky, great question. I'll take a stab first and then kick it over to the professor. Yeah, they're eligible for this. And there are many seniors out there going to need it. We did about 13 town halls around Massachusetts the month of January. At every single one of them, the average Social Security payout, and Professor can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about $1,200. I asked the crowds, so thousands of people writ large across those 13 different events, how many folks could live off of $1,200 a month in Massachusetts? Not a single hand ever went up. Not one. So as seniors are looking at, have been particularly hard hit over the course of the past couple of weeks, many of them on fixed income. Many of them, if you were even fortunate enough to have a retirement account, stock market's down about 30%, went up a bit today, but was down about 30% over the course of the past couple of weeks. A lot of seniors are facing a very tough and uncertain future until we can get that market to stabilize and hopefully get back to where we need it to be. This bill is crafted to help folks like them. It's a big difference, as the professor pointed out earlier, the difference between a payroll tax cut and this direct cash assistance. If you are a senior, if you are not working, this assistance helps. That payroll tax cut does not, because it only helps if you're working. So those are the folks literally we had in mind, along with folks like Ashley was talking about and Greg were talking about on those first couple of questions, but that's why this bill is drafted the way it is. What else is being done for them? A lot more is being done for them. So on the healthcare side, trying to strengthen Medicare and Medicaid to make sure that folks get access to the healthcare that they need, where they are and when they need it. And we've actually passed some accommodations within Medicare to try to make sure that this response with regards to this virus is more tailored to a Medicare population. But I think there's an awful lot more that needs to be done in ensuring that seniors are going to be able to continue to live with the dignity and quality of life that they're going to expect, and that up until a couple of weeks ago, I think all of us had expected. And Professor, I'll kick to you if, again, the question is, are they eligible for this assistance, and what else is being done for them at this time?
Yeah, no, I thought I have nothing to add to your answer except to say part of what I think the beauty of the approach that you're putting forward is you're not picking and choosing and saying, you come to me, you apply, you explain why you need it. You're giving it very broadly, and that's because there's really going to be a very broad set of needs. There are then additional programs for people who are unemployed, for low-income families to help with their nutrition, for Medicaid and the like, but at least this will be a blanket that will cover, fully cover everyone, making up to $100,000, and then with a somewhat reduced amount, but still substantial, people above as well.
And what, if I can turn the second part of her question around a little bit, is there something else that we should be contemplating specifically for seniors, in addition to this, that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, everything that's happening in the response on the health side is going to be disproportionately important to seniors. So everything you're doing in terms of getting the protective gear, reducing the spread of the virus, ventilators, hospital beds, etc.
Right.
In terms of economically, in particular, I think this is probably the core and most important thing that can be done for seniors.
Great. Next question is for you from Virginia on our Facebook page. Similar place to start. Will there be any help for people who are retired? I think we just answered part of that. But what about those on disability, and what should be done for these folks? So retirees and then folks on disability. Yeah.
So it's very similar to the answer you just gave, Congressman. That if you're on disability, you would get these checks. If you're on Social Security, you're retired, you would get these checks. At a time like this, you just don't want to be picking and choosing who is getting assistance. Everyone in America needs that assistance. And certainly, people with disabilities, this is not, this is a tough time for all of us, a disproportionately tough time, and that's why I think this is so important.
So I agree obviously wholeheartedly with the professor. The only thing I'd add to that, Virginia, is that this is where the economic piece and the healthcare piece come together, right? For folks that are suffering with disabilities, regardless of what they are, what we've seen, particularly with regards to this virus, is that for folks that have other physical challenges, the virus can be particularly dangerous, right, and even deadly. And so that's where, again, we've kind of got these two pieces that start off as a public health issue, and we need to address, and it's morphing into an economic issue, and both. The legislation that we're proposing today does address both from the economics largely around the healthcare side and the economic stimulus, but there's a whole wide variety of other reforms that we've already put forward and that we're continuing to push to address the healthcare side, right? So that is where also each of us can play that role, sheltering in place, social distancing, washing your hands, covering your cough, seeking medical attention if you think you're sick, all of those pieces. That's what stops the spread of this disease. And I think, also critically important here, there's a bit of a false narrative out there, particularly for young folks and healthier folks that think that, this is just the flu. I've had the flu before, no big deal. This is not just the flu. And yes, while there's evidence, ample evidence out there that younger individuals, so young adults and children, seem to be able to tolerate this a bit better. It doesn't mean that they're not infected. It just means that we haven't seen the rates of serious illness at the same level as we have in folks that are seniors in 70s and 80s and beyond. But those younger folks, they can spread it. And we need to make sure that even if you are young and healthy and feeling like, maybe just feel a little sick, or maybe don't even feel all that sick at all, you could still carry this thing. And it's going to be through not engaging in those public health practices that we talked about. Again, washing your hands, wiping down those common surfaces, social distancing, etc., that this continues to spread. And it has the potential to impact then people that have already fragile immune systems or other medical conditions or even disabilities. That's why this is so important, because the economic stimulus, as outlined again by the professor, gives people, not just folks that are hurting, like some of the questions we had earlier, but for folks that might not be, it just gives you the clarity, the certainty, takes down the anxiety just to say, look, for these next couple of weeks, stay home. Take care of yourself, take care of your family. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff. Just focus on you and your loved ones. And if you do that, we will weather this storm far more effectively as individuals, as communities, and across our country. But that's why I think this bill is so important and why we need to pass it, because you just give that people that chance to exhale a bit and say, okay, we're going to be all right. Let's focus on what we can control and move on through it. And that's, I think, what we really need to do, both economically, for our own health, for our anxiety, and at this point for, I think, everybody's morale. Last question that we'll take at the moment is from Elaine, or if we have time, I'll do it real quick on this one. On Facebook for me, what are the chances of this bill going through? Elaine, I hope it's good. We'll see, right? But I'm heartened by the fact that the administration has come out in support of an idea like this. Senator Romney's come out with an idea like this. Tom Cotton's voiced support for it. I talked to a bunch of colleagues today down in D.C. Democrats, they were very excited about the idea. Part of this is, again, having validators like the professor who got out early on this and was pushing this idea, critically important, so we actually can kind of solidify what the diagnosis as to what is going to be fast and big and ambitious and bold and actually help stave off this economic devastation. But even if it's not exactly what I'm talking about, that we're putting that marker down to say, hey, this is what it should be, and then let's go and fight for these other things too. The enhanced unemployment assistance, that Medicaid assistance, additional measures that we're going to need, paid leave. We talked about the need for small businesses and potentially help for some other sectors there that need assistance as well. But small business is critically important in this piece too. So Congress is, we are being pretty ambitious at the moment. There's a lot of ideas out there. We have to make sure, I think my goal in this is to ensure that families are going to be on the focus of this, right? Not starting with big bailouts for big industries, but families, workers, small businesses, making sure that we do this from the bottom up, because that's who needs the help. Last question, I think, was from Natalie. Is that it? Natalie on Facebook, for both of us. How will the money be dispersed, and do we have to sign up? Professor, you want to take a crack at that one? How will it be dispersed, and do we have to sign up?
Right. Yeah, sure. For the large majority of people, this would go automatically. If you paid your taxes, you filed your taxes last year, the IRS has your information. They can give that to the Treasury, and they can direct deposit it in your account and can do it very quickly. There are some people who the government doesn't know what their bank account is. You haven't had a financial interchange with the government, and then you would need to fill in a form and get a check. But for the large majority of people, if you've paid taxes, if you're getting Social Security, if you're on disability, if you have veterans benefits, any of those things, you already have a financial relationship with the government, either paying the government, getting paid by it, and they can piggyback on that information so that you won't have to do anything yourself to get this money.
Agreed exactly with the professor. And that's also one of the great pieces about this idea is that it can be done really quickly. We can get this money out really quickly. We know who the vast majority of taxpayers are. We can find them. We can get this money out to them, and you can inject it in rapidly into the system so people can start using it and start spending it. And you don't have to sign up. So great question. A question we've gotten a lot today. So Natalia, I'm glad you asked it. And Professor, I am so grateful that you were willing to spend some time. Your kids, if you actually do have kids in the car, are far better behaved than mine. Mine would be screaming their heads off at this point. So kudos to you. And thank you so much for making the effort to call while you guys are on the road. It means the world, and we are grateful for your continued service to our country. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we're going to wrap up tonight with, this has not been the St. Patrick's Day that I was hoping for here in Boston. It was, we're in the midst of a pandemic. It was snowing. Our society is largely on lockdown, and Tom Brady decided to leave the New England Patriots. So watching Mr. Brady play in another jersey next year is not going to be all that much fun, but I want to salute him for my ability to continue to be a completely obnoxious and shameless Boston sports fan to as many people as I possibly can be. Tom, thanks for the memories. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow.